What the US has done recently is increase the average tariff rate from about 2.4% to 10%. This is the largest increase in tariffs since 1943. What we know from economics is that you cannot fix a trade deficit with tariffs. It just doesn't work.
At a recent global gathering in Brussels, Ghana's former Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, delivered a sharp warning to policymakers around the world. You cannot fix a trade deficit with tariffs.
You cannot fix a trade deficit with tariffs. It just doesn't work.
Let's break down his powerful message in simple terms. Speaking at the International Democracy Union Forum, Dr. Bawumia responded to a growing concern, what some call weaponization of trade. Governments are slapping tariffs left and right, hoping to fix trade imbalances. But according to him, that's the wrong approach. So, what really caused a trade deficit? Dr. Bawumia says it's a gap between what a country saves and what it spends. If you are spending more than you are saving, guess what? You are going to import more than you export. That's basic economics. This isn't just theory. History has shown us the damage tariffs can do. Dr. Bawumia referenced two major events. The Smooth-Hawley Tariffs Act in the 1930s made the Great Depression worse. And in the 2018-2019 US-China trade war, it disrupted global trade system for years.
Mr. Bawumia, you are representing the African continent. So my question is, how is the weaponization of trade affecting the African economies, particularly Ghana, and what strategies are being considered to strengthen the economic resilience of the African continent?
Thank you very much. I don't know if everyone can hear me. Let's put this in a broader context. I think that one of the things that policymakers are doing recently is a failure to understand the lessons of history as well as the lessons of economics. There are surely trade imbalances. If you look at the share of global trade in terms of exports and imports, Africa has about 2.5% of global exports, has 2.9% of global imports. Asia has 43% of global exports and 38% of global imports. China, 15% of exports, 10% of imports. Europe, you have 38% of exports and 51% of imports. America, 8% of exports and 14% of imports. So there are clearly trade imbalances across the various continents and countries. But what we know from economics is that you cannot fix a trade deficit with tariffs. It just doesn't work. I mean, if you look at the national income identity, where you say that your income is equal to your consumption, investment, government spending plus exports minus imports, that breaks down into a simple equation, which is a truism, that your deficit, the exports minus your imports, would necessarily have to equal the difference between your savings and investment. So for any country which spends more than it saves, you're going to get a trade deficit. The deficit is a macroeconomic problem. It's not a trade policy issue. And you cannot solve that macroeconomic problem with trade policy like tariffs. So you go back, to the Smooth-Hawley Acts of the 1930s, where they put 20% tariffs. You had a Great Depression. And that is what happened recently with China and the US, 2018, 2019. Again, we had the impact, which was negative for global trade. What the US has done recently is increase the average tariff rate from about 2.4% to 10%. This is the largest increase in tariffs since 1943. And the impact will not be small. It will not be insignificant.
Now, let's talk about Africa. According to Dr. Bawumia, the continent only makes up to 2.5% of global exports and 2.9% of imports. Compare that with Asia, Europe, or the US. Africa's share is tiny. So, even small shocks can hit hard. The US recently raised its average tariff rate from 2.4% to 10%. the biggest jump since 1943. Dr. Bawumia says the effect will be global. So, what should Africa do? Dr. Bawumia believes the answer lies in self-reliance and deeper intra-African trade. When the world turns inward, Africa must also turn to itself by building stronger connections within the continent.
Thankfully for Africa, our exports to the United States is about 6.5%, and our imports from the United States is about 4.4%. So we are not as exposed in the broader sense as many other places. But within that context, countries like Lesotho, which have exports in terms of textile exports to the United States, it's about 50% of their exports. And they are benefiting from the African Growth and Opportunities Act, which is AGOA. And these countries are going to be affected very significantly. When you have 50% of your exports, and AGOA is basically going to collapse under these tariffs. So what is you're going to see in Africa, as you're seeing across the world, there's going to be more of a clamor and for self-reliance. And you're going to see a bit more of political space for countries to have more intra-African trade as a way of dealing with this. Currently, our intra-African trade is between 17 and 20%. But I think that as you see a more real look at supply chains within the continent and globally, you're going to see, as you see in Europe, there's an increasing sense that there's been a decoupling of the US-European relationship, and Europe is going to look at its supply chains again, as every other player in this world is going to do. And so Africa is going to look at our supply chains again as a way of looking at it. But at the end of the day, you have to make sure that the macro balances are the ones guiding your trade policy and not tariffs. The tariff rates are not the ones that actually determine the effectiveness of your deficit outcomes.
Mr. Bawumia, I'd like to come back to you and also address China and its role in the African continent. As we know, the role of China in Africa is growing. Do you see African countries deepening trade ties with China in response to rising global protectionism, or are we more likely to see some sort of push for diversification, including partnerships with Europe and possibly other regions as well?
Thank you very much. I think that if you look at what has happened, the whole rules-based order has been disrupted. And there has been a lot of, and there is ongoing, a lot of realignment. I mean, old allies are no longer being seen as allies. And so what has been injected in the whole system is uncertainty and the lack of predictability. And so partnerships are no longer as straightforward as they used to be. China has a major trade participation in Africa. In Ghana, for example, China is our largest trading partner as well as our largest foreign investor. And it is the same for many countries. So I don't see that changing anytime soon. But African countries are going to look at what works for them and diversify accordingly, because the rules-based order, as I said, is something that no longer really exists at the moment, and we have to work back towards that. But as I said, for us on the continent, there has to be a major play for self-reliance in a lot of ways, so that it's not necessarily China or America or Europe, but you've got to really look at your own internal economic dynamics and bring in more value addition to our raw materials so that you can create jobs for the youth. And so the issue is not east or west, or it's just going forward with Africa.
Dr. Bawumia's message is clear. Tariffs won't fix trade deficit. Only smart macroeconomic policies and regional cooperation will do. And that is all for today's episode. Please let us know your thoughts and suggestions on this in the comment section below. My name is Sharif Haruna, and this is AS1 News. Have a joyful life and see you in the next one. Macro.